Okay, we are gonna go ahead and get started. And there's still a few people jumping on, but they won't miss much. So let's get started. My name is Lindsay Keith. I'm one of the organizers for today's webinar. There are a couple of things I want to go over real quick before we jump into the agenda. So first thing is this webinar is being recorded and everybody attending will receive the recording. Secondly, you are all in listen only mode. And so we do ask if you do have questions, so please put those, enter those in on the control panel that's off to the right side. And we will get to those questions on mental health, or if you have questions on the app, we'll be following up with those in our recent blog. So let's go get started and go over what we are going to discuss today. So we've got a lot to cover. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but we have basically 3 parts to today's webinar, where this is part 2, and then we'll follow up with team mental health strategies at the very end. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to introductions. Today we have Jim Aframo, who is done previous webinars with us. He's one of the co-founders of Champions Mind. He served as the sports psychology specialist at Arizona State University, the peak performance coordinator for the San Francisco Giants, and a mental game coach to the scores of Olympic gold medalists and professional athletes across all sports. And if you aren't following Jim on social media, you should definitely check out his Twitter. Next, we have Phil White. He is one of our writers here at Champions Mind. He has written human performance books with the likes of Dr. Kelly Starrett, Andy Galpin, and Sue Falsone. He also collaborates with Nick Gill from the New Zealand All Blacks and Tim DeFrancesco, who was the strength and conditioning coach for the Lakers. So I am going to go ahead and pass this on to Phil so we can get started. So go ahead, Phil.
Well, thanks so much, Lindsay, and to Jim for being with us today, and to everyone who's joined us. And I think most of us would agree that mental health should always be a top priority, but with COVID-19 impacting families, putting jobs at risk and canceling practices, games, and even entire seasons, it's arguable that mental health has become more of a challenge for athletes and coaches than ever before. So, Jim, with that in mind, would you maybe like to start us off by defining what mental health is?
Absolutely, Phil, and thanks, Lindsay, as well, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. As Phil mentioned, we're glad you're with us. We're glad to be here, and this is just such an important topic that affects everyone, really. And so, at one point or another, and then especially with a year like 2020. But we have a ton of good information today, so we're going to really rip through it and give you a lot to think about, and hopefully some practical tips at the end that could really be helpful. So in terms of what is mental health, I like this definition from the World Health Organization. Mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So it doesn't mean that you're always perfect or you always have your A game. It just means that you're pretty solid in these areas. And from more of a subjective standpoint, I would say that mental health is when most of the time you feel like your best and your true self. And, no one feels good or, great every day, but we want to feel like our true self most of the time. And I think that's what mental health is really all about. One of my favorite quotes comes from the brilliant psychologist Abraham Maslow. And many years ago, he wrote, in any given moment, we have 2 options: to step forward into growth or to step back into safety. And mental health, peak performance, everything we do with Champions Mind is about continuing to step forward into growth. And so during this time, our 2 options are, stay in our pajamas all day and watch Netflix. And a little bit of that is probably a good idea, but too much of that, we're just staying stuck in our comfort zone. Or what we can do is find a way to think gold and really step forward into growth and use this situation, this time in our life, as really an opportunity to really grow as a person and as a performer. So this is going to be a fun discussion today.
Oh, great stuff, Jim. Thank you. And could you tell us a little bit more about how mental health can impact well-being and performance?
Absolutely, Phil. So I'm my doctorate is in sports psychology, and I'm also a licensed professional counselor. And for example, I was at Arizona State University for 10 years and served as both sports psychology specialist and professional counselor there. And so I know from firsthand experience how tightly mental health and athletic performance, or any type of performance, including school performance, are intertwined. And I often say that there's no health without mental health. And, there's really no peak performance without mental health either. If we're overly anxious, worried, or depressed, that's not something we can just set aside when we feel like it. It impacts our relationships with family, friends, coaches, and teammates, and has a detrimental effect on how we practice and limits our performance in competition. How we feel directly affects how we act, and means that negative emotions often spill over into our behavior and our performance. So while mental health issues can feel very personal, they do have knock-on effects on the people around us. We might have outbursts of anger, be almost paralyzed by melancholy, or withdraw from other people. We can become irritable, irrational, and angrier than usual. Or as we begin to pull inward, we ignore the needs of others, become solely focused on our own issues, and stop communicating effectively. And that really makes things toughest on those in our inner circle. So mental health can also have physical consequences, like becoming sedentary, sleeping poorly, or gaining too much weight because of our attempts to self-soothe by eating or drinking too much. And I also see that a lot of times athletes will get injured during a stressful time in their life because they're not doing a good job, or as good of a job as they can in terms of stress management. So when they step on the field, they tend to be a little bit more tense and uptight and distracted, which puts them in harm's way. So when we're chronically stressed, our heart rate goes up, levels of stress hormones like cortisol skyrocket, and we take slow, rapid breaths. Our muscles can tighten up, and our joints could get sore. Among the athletes I work with, I often notice something different about the ones who are injured. And it's not because they have a cast on an arm or a brace on a leg, but that their shoulders are slumped, a frown is on their face, and they look at the ground a lot. And so they look defeated, even though it's just one part of their body that's injured. And it's often the same with somebody who's dealing with mental health issues, overly anxious or depressed, is they tend to look defeated. So we're going to talk about body language a little bit later on. And it's not just relationships or your sports performance that starts to suffer. If you work, your job performance might slip, or like I said earlier, if you're a student, your grades might start dropping. And when left unaddressed, mental health issues can start to dominate your entire life. So we want to do our best to tackle mental health issues and ideally nip them in the bud before they can blossom into something bigger.
Absolutely. And Jim, what impact can mental health challenges have on an athlete's mindset and how they're able to express their mental skills?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Phil. So we've included mental health as a module in the Champions Mind course on the app, because you can't separate it from other aspects of mental skills work. And just like visualization or goal setting, we could all learn to use tools and techniques that help us to improve and safeguard our own mental health. Uh, a key point here is that we all of us humans, have a negativity bias, which is designed to help us detect threats and stay alive. But when our mental health starts to suffer, that bias gets really amplified to the point where almost all of our thoughts can become negative, and it's kind of like we fall into a black hole and stay stuck there. We start to question our abilities as an athlete or as a coach, as a person, and self-doubt begins to overtake our self-confidence. And as our worries escalate, we ruminate on them more and more, which really prevents us from being fully present and giving our best in the moment. And so rather than visualizing success, we start to expect failure and calamity. And unfortunately, all of this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We expect the worst, and then that's what we get because of kind of how we go about things from that standpoint. Um, we also have a module on the app for cognitive distortions. And this also pertains to peak performance and our mental health. And specifically, cognitive distortions are thinking errors that all of us make from time to time. Um, and these can become more common and more severe when our mental health slips. So rather than celebrating small successes and wins, we minimize or discount them. And we tend to magnify our mistakes or just focus only on our mistakes. We start to view every situation in sport and life through an overly emotional lens and can start to catastrophize the smallest issue into a gigantic problem. And it seems, almost like, bigger than life and something that we, is just the worst thing in the world because it feels like that on the inside. Um, and as athletes or any of us who are struggling with their mental health, we stop acting like a fearsome predator that is confident, determined, and even, at times, appropriately ruthless on the field of play, where, we go after and collect what's ours and, perform our absolute best. And instead, we start kind of moving around and thinking like a prey animal that's overly vigilant, jumpy, and nervous. And this leads us to tightening up and becoming too risk adverse at the very time when your best performance requires you to be loose and free and athletic and to take chances. And so again, we step back into safety rather than stepping forward into growth. And, again, it's all about the champion's mind is all about thinking gold and never settling for silver. And that is being our true best self and stepping forward into growth rather than staying stuck in kind of our comfort zone.
That's great stuff. Thank you, Jim. And what would you say the four main areas of mental health are? And could you tell us a little bit about each one?
Absolutely, Phil. I mean, mental health is a big topic, but I think it really helps to narrow it down to four key categories. And so the first one is more about anxiety. We feel stressed, we feel worried. In fact, a huge percentage of medical doctor visits are really about anxiety, stress, and worry. And kind of the toll that all that stress is taking on our body, as well as on on us mentally. And um, so as we discussed in a recent webinar on dealing with pressure and thriving under pressure, we do need a little bit of stress and pressure so that we do rise to the occasion and perform our best. It wouldn't be a good thing, although it sounds nice, it wouldn't be a good thing if we never had any stress or pressure in our life. There'd be nothing really spurring us on to bigger and better things. And so I would say maybe perhaps that's between a 1 and a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the stress that we want to experience. But if that starts to go higher, if that number really starts to go higher and stays there, then our anxiety, stress, fear, and worrying can really go through the roof. And when that happens, we start to ignore our good wolf, the positive side of us, and really start to feed the bad wolf. And through a lot of those cognitive distortions, letting our self-talk turn really negative and allowing it to continue cycling around and around and around. And then physically, we move into more of a sympathetic stress state. We're in kind of survival mode all the time, in which we're hyper vigilant. We're feeling like the prey animal, that something bad's going to happen and we need to run for cover. And we find it really hard to relax and calm down, and fall and stay asleep at night becomes a really big issue. And so rather than looking at situations as they really are, we begin to just expect the worst. And we get really caught up in regretting what has happened and fearing about what's might happen. So we're never truly where our feet are. We're never being, in the moment as mindful and as powerful as we can be. So that's the first component of mental health. The second main component of mental health is depression, and that's feeling down, depressed, sad all the time. And, you know, for anxiety and depression, everyone feels this from time to time. It's just more about how often and you know, and how strongly we feel these emotions. Because again, if someone says they never feel anxious or depressed, they're either, you know, lying about that, or they're dead. So you know, it's just part of the human condition. It's just we want to be in control of it rather than that being in control of us. So you know, especially right now, because everyone, you know, or most of us, at least a lot of the time, are having a rough go of it with COVID-19, to be honest. And when we're really depressed, you know, we start to experience feelings of helplessness and powerlessness and worthlessness. You know, we think, man, I'm just not a good person, even though that's, you know, the farthest thing from the truth. And, you know, we begin to convince ourselves that we can't pull out of this. You know, nobody, you know, maybe nobody cares about us, and the future is really bleak and hopeless. And so it can be hard to reason with us when we're in that state, or with someone else when they're really in that depressed state, because of the tendency to discount all the positives and only acknowledge and dwell, you know, on the perceived negatives of our situation. Um, so we'll definitely want to get a handle on, you know, kind of feeling sad, down, and depressed. The third area of mental health relates to substance abuse, or dependence, and this issue really comes to the fore when numbers 1 and 2, the anxiety and depression, are really out of control and aren't being recognized or remedied. And so some people develop eating disorders when their mental health declines, while others turn to alcohol, smoking, and other drugs to, you know, really in an effort to try and self-medicate. And unfortunately, as we all know, these self-destructive behaviors can really lead to further mental, emotional, and physical issues, and so just compounding the problem. And then we tend to feel more depressed, more anxious, and so on. So it could become, you know, pretty vicious circle if we can't, you know, put a stop to it. And the fourth component of mental health is really has to do with our relationships. And even during COVID lockdowns, none of us exist apart from other people. How we think, feel, and act really impacts our family, friends, coaches, and teammates. And when someone is experiencing mental health issues, their relationships really start to deteriorate. Um, you know, if they're not careful and really prioritize relationships, and friction points become more common, and a lot of damage really can be done, whether it's intentional or not. And so someone who's struggling with depression, anxiety, you know, maybe dealing with substance abuse issues or dependence issues, can start to become combative and unstable, or just totally shut down and withdrawn. And either is tough to deal with for the people who really care about them or us, or, you know, we care about the people in our life dealing with those things. So these are the four areas we really want to, you know, keep our thumb on and make sure that we're addressing in terms of our mental health.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for that, Jim. And what might be some red flags that either ourselves or someone we know might be dealing with a mental health issue and need help?
You know, as I just mentioned, if someone you know, or, you know, maybe for one of us, starts maybe overdoing it again with self-medication, you know, maybe drinking much more than normal. You know, it's kind of a joke. I heard, you know, I saw a meme on social media about, you know, there's only 2 times during the day with COVID, and that is coffee time in the morning and wine time at night. And so, you know, unfortunately, we could take that too seriously and get caught up with, you know, leaning and really spending too much time and energy, kind of in a state of, you know, just using or thinking about using substances, rather than taking on the game and making, you know, taking on the day and trying to make something big happen. Um, you know, the same goes for self-harm. Obviously, any thoughts about hurting yourself or others, you know, take those seriously. Um, you know, you might notice a change in mood that goes beyond them just, you know, if you're concerned about someone, just goes beyond them just being down for a day or two, you know, because again, that's to be expected. No one has 7 days of, you know, bliss every week. You know, we all have some down days and times, but if it seems like they're stuck there, you're stuck there, for more than a few days, it starts turning into weeks or months, that's obviously a red flag that we need to be aware of. We didn't talk about anger. We talked more about sadness, depression, anxiety, worry. But also, if someone's becoming volatile or aggressive, that's important to, as in terms of a red flag, or just pulling away and not saying anything. We tend to isolate ourselves when we, probably the worst time to isolate ourselves is when we're dealing with mental health challenges. We really need a team up for support. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But then also in terms of red flags, any kind of significant or sustained change in personality and demeanor, could even be someone who's all of a sudden acting deliriously happy. What's going on here? Are they thinking about doing something to hurt themselves? And, as a kind of a relief to get away from the pain, which is never a good idea because you will get through the pain with the right help. And look back on that and say, man, I felt helpless. It seemed helpless, but now that I know, I was just in a really bad place. And so you will get through that, but it could definitely be a red flag if you notice someone almost, doing way better than expected, and then just something seems kind of concerning about that. And then just anything that someone starts doing out of character for them is definitely a red flag. From a sports perspective, I would say that if one of your players or teammates used to be more engaged and highly motivated, but is suddenly very passive and distant, then obviously that could be a warning sign. Or, perhaps someone who's outgoing and talkative, more of an extrovert, now really has nothing to say and hurries away at the end of practice and, is just always kind of by themselves. And so helping them can be just as simple as checking in with them and just acknowledging, hey, here's some of the behavioral things that I'm noticing. You're not getting into necessarily, why they're feeling that way or, trying to read their mind. It's just, hey, here's what I've noticed. And, are you feeling okay? Or it doesn't seem like you're being yourself lately. What can I do to help? And that could even just be spending time with the person. It doesn't mean you have to solve anything for them. And just listening actively to whatever they have to say. And if it's, it doesn't have to be a one-off event either, because a lot of times people say, no, I'm fine. And then it's like, okay, I'm definitely would like to check in with you again about that, and then check in with them again, and they might be more open to talking at that point. But if it's more of a self-destructive pattern, you definitely might need to be a bit more forceful in the behavior you point out, but still very compassionate and offering the help and support and just being a good listening ear to them.
Great stuff, Jim. And what about if you feel like you've tried to help somebody, but either the issue is escalating or it just becomes evident that it's more serious than you can handle? What should someone do in that situation?
Well, there's certainly times when a friend, family member, or teammate isn't equipped to deal with the mental health issue, and I think that's important. Obviously, as I would sort of joke to others that would tend to maybe try to do too much to help, and try to be someone's counselor. That, hey, look, I get paid to do this. You don't get paid to do this for them, and then you're also not trained to do this. So again, a lot of times being the best support for someone dealing with mental health issues or just going through a really rough patch just because of everything hitting them at once, and all the adversity they're facing is, again, just to be there for them, spend time with them, but then, give them a hand in terms of getting help instead of trying to provide all that help for them. And so, I think, in terms of finding a specific person for to refer them to is important. Schools have incredible counseling services with great clinicians that are available. Definitely through your health insurance, and there's definitely a lot of support out there if you look for it. And so, it could be a school counselor, it could be a sports psychologist, it could be a professional in your community. And so if you're the one that's dealing with the mental health challenge, always try to think of a go-to person that you can trust to share your struggles with, because the key here is never suffer alone. And that go-to person, again, might be, a sibling, friend, or coach. But if it's, if you're feeling like, man, I'm feeling really stuck, I'm really not feeling like myself, or, I'm starting to act in ways that are concerning to myself or others, um, then definitely reach out for professional support. That's what they're there for. And view this as being brave, not being weak, because it really does take courage to acknowledge that, you know what, I need a helping hand and I'm not too proud to get help. And we all could use help from time to time. And so anything that could help me, I'm going to take advantage of it. And so if you think something might be wrong, don't hesitate. Again, we want to nip things in the bud, or, don't give up on yourself if you feel like, well, yeah, I probably should have dealt with this earlier. Well, today's a new day. Start today. Because we don't want to get stuck or paralyzed in, painful or harmful thought patterns, feelings, or actions. And, another sign I would say in terms of, it might be time to ask for outside help is if people you trust start commenting about your emotional or mental state. They express a lot of concern about you. Take that seriously. Rather than ignoring this, getting defensive, becoming angry, shutting them out, is maybe to take a step back, take a deep breath and say, you know what, maybe they have my best interest, at heart here. And I'm going to trust my gut that something doesn't seem right, but then I'm also going to trust my friends or my family and go get the help and get back to being who I want to be and feeling the way that I want to feel.
Oh, that's really great stuff, Jim. Thank you. When we were preparing for this presentation, you kind of walked me through a list of some common sabotaging or self-defeating beliefs that can either cause or exacerbate mental health issues. Would you like to share some of these and then maybe provide an antidote for fixing them?
Absolutely. We all could tend to fall into some of these, self-sabotaging and self-defeating belief systems and behaviors. And so let's start with perfectionism. Perfectionism is a great thing on the one hand in terms of, man, I want to have high standards. I want to constantly improve, in my game and in my life. I want to see how good I can get, and I want to see how far I can go. And that's mastery. That's there's no limit. Always a student, always trying to get better. But if that goes too far, you might begin to believe that you can never make a mistake or fail. And it really becomes more shame-based, like, or guilt-based, like I'm letting everyone down, or, I'm worthless because I didn't perform perfectly well. And that's just no good, and it's not sustainable, and it's not really about mastery at that point. Because your self-worth is not tied only to outcomes. And, sport or coaching or whatever we do it is part of who we are, but it's not all of who we are. It never is. And even if you put 100% of your energy and focus and, time into your sport, that doesn't mean 100% of your self-worth is on the line. In fact, your self-worth is never on the line. And so again, if we don't perform well, it's okay to feel a little down and dejected and a little, but you want to regroup and then like, oh man, what did I learn? How can I do better next time? Can't wait to be in that situation again because now I'm a better player. Now I have more, I'm armed with more information in terms of what I want to do next time. So, again, the antidote here is to recognize that, I think it's important to step back too and recognize that nobody is on top of their game every single day. And even the legends in your sport went through slumps. And especially right now during COVID-19, good does have to be good enough for all of us right now. Perfect is the enemy of good or the enemy of great right now because no one has their A+ game right now. And if you do, I need to learn from you, how you're doing it because, again, we all have real concerns and worries and a lot of, we're in the unknown with a lot of things. So it's important really to give ourselves credit where credit's due and to forgive ourselves when we do have some lapses and keep learning and improving until we find ourselves back in the winner's circle. I would say another common trap moving on is that, we all tend to fall into is approval addiction. And this is when you feel like you need everybody to like you and love you and validate your performance just to feel worthwhile. And when you think like this, you're just putting way too much stock in the opinions of others. And so it's important to, I think, to care a little bit about what people, of course, think and, what they have to say, especially those closest to you, your coaches, your teammates, your family, and your friends. Absolutely. But feeling like we always need everyone to love and approve of us is just not sustainable either. Um, and so we don't have to be wounded by what everyone else has to say. And in fact, sometimes people say mean things to us or maybe aren't as supportive as they could be because they're also dealing with, challenges in the moment as well. Um, so the antidote here is to, give people the benefit of the doubt, care more about what you think about yourself and, being able to look in the mirror and be proud of kind of how hard you're working and all the good things that you're doing. And recognizing that, you just can't please everyone all the time. And that's probably not a good goal anyway, um, because not everyone wants the best for us. And so the key is surround yourself with people that do want the best for you and, feed your own good wolf in terms of being the best for yourself. Moving on, another self-sabotaging belief is entitlement. And this occurs when we lose perspective on the big picture and start to feel like the world owes us something all of the time. And we kind of have a woe is me attitude, and a little bit of that is understandable, but we don't want to get stuck there. And so the antidote to this is really having a good understanding of context, and even realizing that during this time of COVID, it's bad, and it's bad for a lot of people, but it could be worse. It could be a lot worse for all of us. And so, think about what, let's say, our grandparents went through in terms of, World War One, World War Two, the Spanish flu, the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression. They went through a lot, uh, and they got through it. And we could get through this as well. So I think in terms of kind of battling entitlement, which just kind of just keeps us stuck, is actively being grateful for all the good things that you have and the people around you. And again, that's a surefire way to stop feeling entitled, as is doing something to serve your team or community. So it's really important to really kind of have that attitude of gratitude of, yeah, things are tough right now, but I'm also grateful for these reasons as well, and list those reasons. And also list those people in your life that you're grateful for, whether teammates, coaches, family, and friends. Um, and even special people with special skills, other professionals. It could be your athletic trainers, your strength and conditioning coaches, your sports scientists, sports psychologists, and so on. If you get stuck feeling depressed, you might believe that you'll never feel happy or fulfilled. And again, your problems will always be this bad or worse, and there's no hope for your future. And so it's really important, again, surround yourself with positive people, think a little bit about gratitude and what you're grateful for, and then just a little bit of optimism as well in terms of that what good could happen today, or what good might be coming around the corner, or what good is on the horizon, and start making that more of a self-fulfilling prophecy of what can go right instead of just everything that seems to be going wrong. In terms of our next sort of impossible belief, is kind of a way that we self-sabotage is through magical thinking. And this occurs when we think, it's almost like that we all have this superstition that if we worry enough about a situation, it could be our finances, it could be our season, could be about academics. If we worry enough about a situation, then things will turn out okay. And in this thinking pattern, you're worried if you're not worried enough, which is kind of ironic, but in reality, worrying won't help. A little bit, again, is understandable because it shows you care, gives you a little bit of energy, but then you got to get into directing that energy into remaining positive and proactive and figuring out practical plans to improve your situation. And this is really the definition of mental toughness, is staying positive and proactive when it's probably hardest to stay positive and proactive, during adverse situations and conditions. Um, Let's move on to a couple more quick ones. Another way that we tend to self-sabotage is through low frustration tolerance. And this is when we're kind of feeling like every little thing that goes wrong is just the end of the world, and here we go again. And I think the antidote to this one is to recognize that things are going to come up each day, and let's start reframing those things that pop up as rather than more problems to be avoided, but and turn them into challenges to embrace. It's like, okay, this is my challenge of the moment, whatever it may be. And I'm going to love this challenge. I'm going to embrace this challenge, and I'm going to find a way to win. And so you're really looking forward to almost, let's show what I'm made of today versus, oh, I hope everything goes okay and it's going to be the end of the world if it doesn't go okay today. And again, that's what champions do. Life's going to throw you a curveball, and you want to find a way to hit that curveball for a home run. And then I would say, maybe one more in terms of one last self-limiting belief for our purposes for now that I want to deal with is the superhero complex. And this is where you kind of, you almost, it's a little bit related to perfectionism where, you believe you should be impervious to any negative emotion, or you should always feel positive and never have any negative thoughts. And, you should be able to handle everything during this time period just as easily as maybe you handled it when things were different and things were a little better. As if you really were Superman or Wonder Woman. And in reality, life isn't a game of perfect. And none of us, although I want you to feel this way when you step on the field, none of us are 10 feet tall and bulletproof. So just because you have some negative thoughts or an off day or go through a rough patch, or, you only have your B game, or you drop the ball here or there while trying to do your best, that doesn't mean that you're weak or a failure, at all. And so it's okay to be vulnerable to others when you feel like this, and you could power up by seeking their support and encouragement, and getting help, reminders from other people that, hey man, you're impressive and you're dealing with a rough patch right now, but I'll know you get through it because I've seen you get through things, hard things before.
Terrific, Jim. Thanks for all that great information. Obviously, there are still those days, even if we deploy some of those antidotes to deal with self-limiting or self-destructive belief patterns or thought patterns you just mentioned, that we might still have a day or two where we're feeling low, or maybe those anxieties or perceptions of pressure or stresses or worries might start to pile up. So what might be some coping tools that we could use during those times to elevate ourselves or change our physical, emotional, or mental state?
Well, Phil, I look at mental skills as both performance and coping tools. And, so daily mindset training will help you to perform better in your sport, but it can also help you better deal with COVID-19 and other challenges that life throws your way. And when you really think about it, life is a psychology test, and, we're faced with all sorts of challenges, even during the best of times or during, when things are more standard in terms of our season and so forth. And, you want to really attack those challenges. And we do that with our mental game. And so these are life skills. Mental skills are life skills. They're not magic skills. You got to work on them, but they really are life skills that help us on and off the field. And so let's go over some of those. And so, the easiest way I know to change your physical and psychological state is with your breath. And we've all heard this one. I don't think we all do a good job with this one, but let's just try a little exercise right now. So what I'd like everyone to do, everyone listening, is do this quick exercise with me for a moment. And so let's begin. This is going to be colored breathing, which is begin by taking a nice deep breath, and just kind of let all the air out. And then for the next, few moments, what we're going to do is imagine inhaling a calming blue through your nose, and then exhaling an anxious red through your mouth. And so just take a moment here to inhale a calming blue and then exhale an anxious red. And so breathe all the way in and breathe all the way out and take your time with this. And so color breathing is great as you're doing this because, it gets us in more of the imaginative side of our brain. With the breathing, it tends to kind of give our body a little quick reset. And the neat thing about color breathing is you could do it anytime, any place, and you could do it, let's say, for a minute as a reset or as long as you want. Another quick breathing technique, if you haven't tried this one, would be more ratio breathing, where you count and you breathe in for 4 and out for 6. So breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the counting also serves as a good distraction. And then the longer out breath is really what really helps in terms of the promoting the relaxation response. So we have color breathing. Breathe in a calming color, breathe out a stress, tension, whatever color that suits or fits for you. And a lot of times it's red for most people. And then ratio breathing, where in for 4, out for 6. And again, do it for a minute or as long as you want. And hopefully just by doing that for a few seconds here, you feel a bit calmer. But it does take a little work and practice until you really make it a habit. And then your body and you start to look forward to taking these little mental health deep breathing breaks throughout your day. It really does make a big difference, because a lot of times when we're under stress, we're feeling a lot of pressure, we actually hold our breath, and that's not good for us. And that's why a lot of times we're tired and we have a headache. So in terms of body language, next coping tool, we could also do our part to act our way out of a stressed out state into a more relaxed one. And the first method is to tell yourself that no matter what happens today, so in the morning, tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to maintain positive body language all day today. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do my best. And, I'm going to stand tall, I'm going to hold my head up high, and I'm going to walk confidently. And, I'm going to avoid slumping, slouching, and other depressed postures. Because we tend to act the way we feel, but then we also tend to feel the way we act. So if we're acting defeated, we're going to tend to feel defeated. So you can amplify your body language by paying attention to your facial expressions. Avoid looking downcast, replace your frown with a confident smile, and make every effort to keep your face, at least neutral, even if a problem or unexpected challenge arises during the day. In terms of sleep, that's another one. Everyone knows about that one, but do your breathing, the color breathing exercise we just did together for a few minutes before you go to sleep at night, or ratio breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. There's just a lot of great relaxation techniques that you can use, and try all of them, because you might be surprised with one that you end up liking the most. And then, I like kind of the gratitude thing before when your head hits the pillow at night, first ask yourself, did I do everything today in terms of, being a champion today? And if the answer is yes, give yourself a pat on the back. And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, how am I going to be a champion tomorrow? Think about what you want to accomplish tomorrow, and then put today to rest, to bed, so to speak. And then in terms of mixing a little gratitude into your attitude, just think of, 2 or 3 things. We've heard this too, but we also, we need to make these more of habits instead of just knowing about them. But say out loud or jot down 3 things, or, maybe people that you were thankful for today. And in this way, we can do a much better job of resting easy and kind of ending our night on a positive. So I think that's important. And then in the morning, you could start your day by looking into your bathroom mirror, and how, it sounds silly, but and also uncomfortable, as it might feel at first. Look yourself right in the eye and say, I'm a champion, and my goal is to have a gold medal day today, and I'm going to really bring my best attitude and effort today, and try to make something positive happen today, whether I might feel like it in the moment or not. And so decide that you're going to go for gold all day, and you're not going to settle for silver. And again, as we talked about at the beginning, I'm going to step forward into growth today. I'm not going to step back into safety or just trying to be comfortable all day, because trying to be comfortable when you're dealing with mental health issues is not comfortable. We feel better when we take action. And then, if you, sometimes I like to recommend having wear a rubber band around your wrist, or maybe even tie a string, gold string around your wrist to remind yourself that, I'm going to do my best to champion my day today, and have that, confident can-do frame of mind, and with really positive self-talk. So when you do something well, hey, that was like me to do that. If you didn't do something well, forgive yourself, move forward, learn from it. Next thing you do, best thing you do, kind of attitude. And then it's super beneficial, obviously, to carve out some time every day to do something fun or relaxing just for you, even if it's for 10 minutes. Because a lot of times we say, oh, I don't have time to watch a movie or take a warm bath. Well, you're worth the time to do that, but if, let's say, you really are busy, at least try to find some time to do something that makes you smile or laugh, or just get your mind off, even if it's reading a few pages of a fun book, is a good idea. So again, these, trying to have a routine where you definitely have some fun to look forward to each day is important, even when times get tough, and especially when times get tough.
No, I love that, Jim. That's a good reminder to be kind to ourselves, even if we do get stuck in a negative frame of mind and start misbelieving that, oh, I don't deserve to do anything fun or anything relaxing, to consciously build in these rituals and routines to take care of ourselves, so we can take care of better people, better take care of the people around us. So thanks for that. Another thing that I found interesting when we were talking about this topic in this presentation was when you shared with me that some of the differences between being in a threat state and a challenge state. Could you explain a little bit about each of these and some of the differences between them?
Well, this is such an important idea for all of us in terms of just how we frame everything, and how we view our situation. And that's going to either lead us into a threat state where, again, we feel like everything is coming at us and we're powerless and helpless to do anything about it. Or we view our situation more from a challenge state where it's, okay, what's my challenge of the moment? Bring it on. Let's show what I'm made of. Let's show what I've got. Let's give it my best. And I know I'll be proud of myself if I try to make something big happen today. And so when we're feeling more in that threat state, it's more survival mode, and we act like a prey animal. And so we're always running scared. We're looking over our shoulder. We're acting tight. Again, our body language isn't very good. We feel like we're on our heels, rocking back to avoid the threat, sort of like an antelope scanning long grass for the stalking lion. Whereas in that challenge state I was talking about, that's the peak performance state. That's the champion's mind state, where you become the lion, and you're going to fight and scrap and do the best you can with what you've got in the moment. And so you're more thinking of yourself as a fearless predator who's always trying to find the upper hand in any situation. And you're confident in your ability to make the kill, and you're on your toes, and you're ready for anything that comes your way. And champions don't allow themselves to get stuck complaining or wishing their circumstances were different. Instead, they acknowledge the hardship of the situation and then really start finding ways to use that to their advantage. So, for example, if you can't train your body like you normally would with your teammates right now, well, how can I use that extra time to get one day better every day? And that might be working on my mindset. That might be, working on my nutrition. That might be working on my rest and recovery. That might be flexing my talents in other areas, whether with hobbies or other, in terms of relationships. Focusing on school or work. And so you don't have to figure everything out today, or always have your stuff together, but you're always striving and working hard to get the best out of whatever you do have that day. And you definitely are actively seeking out small wins and deciding that, what, I'm going to have a gold medal day today. Might not be a perfect day, and I might not feel my best today, but when my head does hit the pillow at night, I'm going to be able to smile because I went after it today. And again, I stepped into growth rather than step back into either business as usual, status quo, avoided everything that, I probably would have felt better if I just tackled it. And that's the thing too with mental health concerns is a lot of times everything seems much worse than it really is. And then when we do it, like, oh, this homework assignment or this or that, it's going to be so much work. But when we actually get it done, we feel good and we think, oh, that wasn't as bad as what I thought. So push yourself to get started and then use that positive self-talk to keep going. And then again, when your head hits the pillow at night or you look in the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror, you could have a big smile on your face.
That's fantastic stuff. Thank you, Jim. And we've talked quite a bit so far about kind of the individual strategies for improving our own mental health and maybe some ways to see red flags in our own behavior or that and others and strategies for getting help ourselves or for others getting help. But what about in a group situation? What might be some ways that if a coach or a parent is on the line that they might be able to apply some tactics and techniques to improve mental health of a team or a group?
Well, that's a great question, Phil, because I know the coaches, the parents, the athletes, we have a huge turnout today, and that's because everyone that's attending has their own best interest at heart and those around them. And so, in terms of a coach, for example, a coach can emphasize to their players that being in need is not being in trouble. And a lot of times we almost feel like, I'm dealing with some mental health challenges right now. There's something wrong with me, or I'm in trouble, or I'm bad. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. And so being in need is not being in trouble. And then also, I think, it's important that, some appropriate self-disclosure from leaders, from coaches, from parents that, hey, you don't have to be inappropriate by telling too much, but it could be, hey, I went through a rough patch and I really benefited from some counseling during that time, or I went through some hardships, or I went through a slump and and I met with a sports psychologist and it really got me through that wall that I kind of hit. And so just sharing that, hey, we all could use help at times, and kind of the more help the better, because again, if our ultimate goal is to see how good we can be and how much fun we can have, the more help the better. And so I think that's important in terms of just being able to share that, I've gotten help too. I've had a lot of coaches say, man, I wish I had someone like you when I was playing, or I wish, I went to count, I mentioned that I'm also a licensed counselor. I've had a lot of people say, hey, no, man, I wish I met with you years ago, because I didn't realize how helpful this was going to be. And even if you've met with someone in the past that wasn't very helpful, don't use that as an excuse not to try meeting with maybe another clinician that's going to be a better fit for you. Of course, it's also important to another way to destigmatize mental health, or even sports psychology services is, again, it's normal to feel anxious or worried, and remind your players that they're only human too. You're only human too. And you could even share some examples of pro athletes like Michael Phelps or Simone Biles or Kevin Love or Dak Prescott, or there's just so many great examples. Serena Williams, who have shared about their own, mental health struggles, and again, they stepped into growth. They got help. They worked on it, and they're dealing with it in the best way they can, and that's pretty cool. And then, again, it's important for reframing reaching out for help as a strength, not a weakness. And be specific about the resources available at your school, campus, or in your community, and let them know that if anyone needs professional help, you know who to send them to, and that they'll be in good hands. And if an athlete takes advantage of this, encourage them to really to stick with it and give this process time. Just like learning a new sporting skill, counseling or therapy takes a while to work. So urge them to commit and be patient with the process rather than, I'm just going to try it once or twice. That's not going to help. If you could, go for, as long as you need to feel better, that's a good thing. And so that you really get a handle on your situation. And so I would also reiterate that while your athletes don't have to tell you everything, you and your fellow coaches are there for them, whether that's to provide practical advice or just to listen, or just to be around them, can be really helpful. And let your players know that they're not abnormal if they're feeling, depressed, lonely, or stressed out. they're actually a normal person caught up in an abnormal situation. And that's the case for all of us right now. We're all normal people caught up in kind of an abnormal situation. And to help them cope, suggest that you're going to start going through a mental skills program together as a team even, and direct them to resources that you find most useful. So again, the theme from today is step into growth rather than stepping back into comfort and safety and, kind of business as usual, even though it's not working for us. Work on your mental game, work on your mental health. And you want to be able to look back a few years from now and go, man, that was really tough what we went through and what I went through. I'm not glad that I went through it, but I'm glad about who I became in terms of, by going through it, because what came at me, I used to my advantage rather than letting COVID and everything else use me. So that's about being a champion in your life and in your sport as well. So thanks everyone so much for listening today. And, back to you, Phil.
Oh, thanks so much, Jim. Looks like for the Q&A session that we had planned here, that we ran over time. We want to be respectful of your time, that you've carved out a section of your day to spend with us. So with that in mind, what we'll do, if you have questions that you've already submitted, or if you want to just quickly jot one down in the in that user interface panel there on the right of your screen, the top right, and click that to send it over to us. Jim and I will work on kind of a two-part blog post that we'll send you the link to once that's live to answer any questions that you might have. So thanks for your patience with our responses to those. But yeah, really just appreciate so much everyone joining us today. Thank you so much to Lindsay and to Jim as well. And, sometimes I think it can feel like the pandemic's never going to end. A lot of us are at home with kids trying to do remote parenting as well as working from home. And if we've got coaches on the line as well, trying to do all that with also trying to coach their teams and keep everyone together and on the same page. And so we know it's hard, and we're definitely not trying to disregard those challenges. But at the same time, I hope that some of the mental skills and coping techniques that Jim shared today have helped you to become a bit better equipped to safeguard your mental health and to help others around you. And really, our goal at Champions Mind is to provide world-class mental skills training to you. And as Jim said, those are both performance tools and coping tools. So always reach out to us at the email address on your screen. Let us know how we can be a resource and how we can come alongside you and to help you not just in your sport, but in life. And if you're a coach and you'd like to dive deeper into this topic, our Champions Mind team license includes the 12-module course that Jim mentioned. And in that, there's an entire mental health module along with sessions on some of the topics we've covered in previous webinars, like thriving under pressure and mental toughness and more. So if you'd like more information of that or for us to walk you through it, again, drop us a line to info@champsmind.com. And we'll be sure to set up a call with you. Or if you're an individual athlete or a parent, you can unlock all of our sessions by tapping GoPro in the account section screen of your Champions Mind app. So again, really appreciate you joining us today. Jim, did you have any final thoughts?
No, just thank you to everyone who joined us today for giving us some of your time and attention. And from Lindsay, Phil, and I, we all are giving you a high five for joining us, and have a gold medal day and gold medal life. And that's what we're here to help you with in terms of reaching your goals. So thank you very much. To be continued. We'll talk more and in good mental health. Thank you very much.